Hello everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, the Genie Vlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's video, I will be reacting to my Black American Ancestry DNA results, Ancestry Test Review, I Learned a Lot, by TP Locks. This is a channel I really don't know much about. He obviously comes from Black American ancestry, what many would call African American ancestry. So more than likely, if he gets that typical reading, we're going to be looking at about 75% African, specifically sub-Saharan African, and then about 25% European. Now, this was suggested to me because it was said that he really goes well in depth into this, and I think he goes into a few different tests. I'm not sure, maybe I'm thinking of a different video. But before we do jump into the video, please be sure to give this a like. That really does help me out. Also, be sure to subscribe and click that bell for notifications on future videos. With all of that fun stuff said, let's go ahead and jump into the video.
Today, you guys, I'm going to be sharing my ancestry results. Let me go ahead and get a thumbnail. Now, my wife got me this ancestry kit. I don't know if y'all can see that. It's real. The box is dirty now. I honestly believe that this is one of the best gifts that you can give yourself and your family, because what's better than the gift of knowing who you are? And I gotta say, you guys, the results that I got were actually pretty surprising. As Black people in this country, a lot of times you can feel a little bit like an orphan. There's a lot of people that come from, the West Indies, or they come from the motherland, and they actually have a nationality to attribute their Blackness to. This was something that was really important for me. I really wanted to figure out, what that flag was. Was it Nigeria? Was it Ghana? Where was that nationality? Where could I sort of look to in terms of Africa and say, those are the people that are most like me? Here you go. My results are, I am 35% Nigerian. Okay, I think I kind of knew that. Okay, I think I kind of knew that. I'm an honorary Niger. Some of my subscribers are from Nigeria. They've already called me honorary, so you know what I'm saying. I already knew my top percentage. What's up? The second highest percentage was 25% Cameroon and Congo. Then you've got 14% Mali, 8% Benin and Togo, 5% Ivory Coast and Ghana, England and Northwestern Europe at 4%. That's a lot. 3% France, 2% Senegal, 2% Scotland, and 1% Norway. And then you got 1% indigenous North American. Black folks, we always say we got that Indian in our family. So you know what I'm saying? In my case, it would be true.
The whole Native American ancestry in American families in general, whether you come from Black ancestry or white ancestry, it really is more than often a myth. I guess it depends on the person, but basically there's just so many people where they have that story of, oh, well, we have Native American ancestry, and there really is nothing to show that that truly is there. It certainly is possible with 1% that he does have that Native American ancestry, and it's not just some sort of misread or something. But if he were to get one of his parents, or if an aunt or an uncle on either side were willing to test, because they're one generation further, if they have more indigenous ancestry, then that makes it much more possible, and especially gives an idea of which side it's coming from, because sure, it's possible that's coming from just one side or both sides, but if that were something that he wanted to look into and try to see, could he, build his family tree and actually get a name or at least an idea of what line that's coming from, testing more family members is a way to do that. But let's continue.
Good here. I'm kidding. The first thing that's pretty eye-opening to me, you guys, you add up my European percentages, that's about 10% white. That's at least about 30-40% away from not being able to say the N-word. I'm telling you that right now. So I thought that was a pretty high percentage. It's kind of like a lot of light-skinned folks on my dad's side of the family.
Honestly, 10% is really low European percentage for African American readings. As I said in the beginning of the video, it's usually about 25%. So at 10%, he's actually on the much lower side of it. So I wonder if he looked further into it and found that, or, discusses that further in the video.
Family. And so I knew that there was some sprinkles of some European in there. But what was also actually pretty perplexing as well was that I didn't really have a strong presence of any particular African nationality. Right? You got Nigeria at 35%, which is pretty significant, and you got Cameroon at the 25%. But when you're thinking about those percentages, it's like they're not really so high that you can be like, okay, well, I'm heavy Nigerian. Basically, when you look at my DNA, it's like I'm just like a trail mix, you know what I'm saying? I'm a trail mix of several different types of African, obviously, but like these percentages are, you know, lower level significant. Like even the 14% in Mali is like, okay, well, I think really what this ancestry test showed me was that it is very, very difficult to just track that person, that black person, that African person, just be like, okay, well, I see now my grandfather, as far back as I can trace, was Nigerian. My grandmother on my dad's side, as far back as I could trace, is from Mali. It's almost impossible to do that. Now,
well, yes and no. If I remember the comment correctly of who suggested this, I think he will go into this. But if you can do Y-DNA testing or mitochondrial DNA testing, it may not give you super specific answers necessarily, but it may give you more specific ancestors. Part of the difficulty is just the difficulty in reading autosomal DNA, which is what these tests do. They read your autosomal DNA, which is DNA that you're getting from your mom and your dad, and then that's being recombined and creating you. And by using that DNA compared to what people they have and population groups they have in their database, they then come up with these percentages. So part of it has to do with just the fact that it's really difficult to pinpoint exactly where the DNA is coming from because people spread out and DNA spread. But another part of the difficulty is just the fact that there are a lot of areas and regions within Africa that don't have good population testing done for all sorts of various reasons, which is something I know is commented a lot on the videos that I do that talk about African ancestry and DNA and things like that. But another part of it is just with American history and because of slavery, literally taking people and stripping away their identity and just making their identity being black. And so more than likely, you probably have different lines of your family that do come from different areas of Africa just because after a while, there were different ancestors who had children with people that came from the different areas of Africa. So let's continue.
What I will say is before I knew that it was impossible, I wanted to utilize some of the perks. I think this is free, but you can opt to, once you do your DNA test, to show all the matches that...
This is the best part of DNA testing, in my opinion, because this is where you can truly build out your family tree, find things that you can't find in the paper trail, and basically be able to expand beyond. And honestly, for people of African American ancestry, this is where it really shines in being able to overcome the difficulties caused by the atrocities of slavery. You know, people didn't have their names written down in records. And most of the time, if they ever were actually recorded, it was in a way that they were just possessions, so you often didn't even get names. Let's continue.
That you have from your DNA. So for me and my DNA, it actually did show my auntie. It showed my first cousin. I'm talking blood related on my dad's side. It showed these people, which made me feel pretty cool because, you know, this has a bit of legitimacy to it. I see that I gave my DNA and you instantly locked me to people that are my known family.
And even better, because he has known family who have tested, that means that when he looks at other matches that he doesn't know how they're related, if he sees that he's sharing these known relatives with those matches, it can help pinpoint which side, because you don't know if a match is from your mom's side, from your dad's side. So if he gets a match and it matches his aunt and first cousins from his dad's side, then he instantly knows that that match is going to be found through his dad's side. And as you build that out and you confirm second cousins and third cousins and other stuff, when you can share those matches, it helps pinpoint what ancestors to look through to try to figure out how you're connected to those people.
But then it also gives you, I think this is for an extra amount of money, it gives you the ability to open what's called a family tree. Now be warned, once you go down this rabbit hole, it will be very difficult to come out, okay? I think the price is about $14.99 additional per month. I didn't mind paying that because I was really just trying to gung-ho, trying to figure out who I was. Finding out that I'm a trail mix of African and 10% white didn't really help me. It didn't really tell me everything that I really wanted to know about myself, right? I felt like I could identify some more specific people and sources, right? The cool thing about Family Tree is that the Family Tree option gives you the ability to, you know, put yourself, your mother, your father, their mothers and fathers, et cetera, and based on the data that you provide, birthday, it will create hints. Now, these hints, they appear as little leaf notifications that basically say, hey, here's some, public documents that sort of affirm your relationship to this person. Do you want to add them to your family tree? So this could be anything from funeral records, draft cards, census data. It could be marriage certificates, divorce certificates in some case. You'll also be able to, with that fee that you pay, connect to other family trees that have ancestors in common. A lot of stuff, you guys.
Just be careful when adding this stuff. A lot of people will go through and they just go, yes, 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 that hint's correct, that hint's correct, that's hint's correct. It's not always going to be correct, especially if you have family names that are very common. Like if you come from a family with the name Jones, you're probably going to get suggested a lot of stuff because, there's going to be a whole lot more John Joneses in the world, especially, if you have a John Jones born in, let's say, 1850, and then you look and see how many other John Jones were born about 1850, there's probably going to be a lot all over the place. So you want to be careful when adding this stuff, and you don't want to just go willy-nilly and just click add everything you find, especially when you look at other people's trees, because other people can do exactly what I'm saying, and then it gets added and repeated by others, and then it becomes basically you have all of these trees out there that are incorrect. So when you are adding records and all that, you want to be careful, and you can actually do this for free beyond just Ancestry. The benefit of doing it on Ancestry is you can connect it to your tree. So if you build out the family tree on Ancestry and then you've done a DNA test on Ancestry, you can connect that DNA to your place in the tree, and it will help you figure out how different matches are related to you based on what they've supplied and how you're matching them. But I'm so happy that he is talking about this, because this is exactly what I always try to say when it comes to these DNA tests. This is the way to go if you want to learn your true history. Yeah, he's getting a vague result of his ancestry. He's getting that idea of that he does have, Nigerian, Benin and Togo, Mali connections, things like that. But it's not going to tell him any sort of specific connection to specific people. It's not really going to tell him the story of what his ancestors went through, their actual stories, what, where they were born and what they lived their life like, and the actual family narrative. And going the way he's going, that's the way to do it. He's going to learn his true family history. And I bet he's learned a lot of amazing things about his actual story that he can connect to much more than just a generalized percentage of Nigerian.
And this is where I got lost. I started putting information in for my family. A little leaf would pop up. I would delve into it, find another leaf. I was basically able to track all the way back to where my last name came from. And quite frankly, you guys, it was an emotional, traumatic experience, because one thing that nobody tells you about with this experience, if you really delve into it deep, is that you are going to have to confront some very real things about your family. As when I tell you I found a bill of sale for one of my ancestors on my mother's side. Yes, a bill of sale. A bill of sale with a great-great-great-great-grandmother's name written on the bill of sale, with all the legal lingo basically saying, hey, you're going to own this person forever type stuff. Like, I'm telling my mom about it. We're talking, we're crying about this stuff, guys. I also found out on my dad's side, my last name literally comes from people that own slaves. Obviously, we knew this stuff, right? But to see that Pinson name and see slave owner, to see that this person owned 2 slaves that were under 10 years old on a census, you would get to points where there were dead ends. On my mother's side, I couldn't find stuff on her father. On my grandmother's side, after a certain point, you just couldn't find more information. Even on my dad's mother's side, at some point, you just can't find information. The only space where I had a full account of our history from the moment they landed to up to this point was the Pinson name, which basically started off with these white affluent guys from France via Germany. But it ended up this process where I became really grateful to know my family more. I knew more names. Through the census, I was able to find out some of their occupations. It gave me more of an appreciation for how far we've come. A lot of times when you talk about, in America, how difficult it is to confront race, think about how difficult it would be for me to confront this white side with the Pinson name, who were the slave owners, who benefited in the wills, who benefited from the last name in ways that, the black side couldn't benefit. And imagine me trying to bridge that gap and say, hey, your grandfather was a slave owner and he gave birth to a mulatto child, but in the census it says that his wife was white. How does this happen? Do you guys have any information about the slaves that he owned? Because I feel like, at least on this side, there's a person missing. You know what I'm saying? These sorts of mysteries, frustration that just builds, these emotions. And it really, honestly, you guys, it was both informative and traumatic. The really sad truth, as Black people in this country, there is no real way to connect your history all the way back to the motherland in terms of a specific person. Like, that person's name is not going to be recorded. That person's marriages, his connections, his life, his occupation is not going to be dignified if it wasn't dignified in census data. Seeing that juxtaposition between white records were kept, Black records were not, and how it manifests itself on your family tree is a very sad, troubling thing. And it's really, like I said, it's hard to describe. It's great to know, that I'm 35% Nigerian, 25% whatever I was. It's great. But in terms of like how I utilize it, I don't utilize it nearly as much as I utilize that family tree. We now have draft cards that we can frame up. We've got legal documents now because of Ancestry.com that we will have forever. We've even got birth certificates that we didn't have because of Ancestry.com. So, that was a much more tangible benefit than knowing, how African I am. If you have any questions, if you have any experiences to share, please leave them in the comment section right now. It's been TP Locks, signing out.
Yo, TP Locks fan, what is going on?
All right, well, that was a pretty good video. I'm wondering if I got it mixed up with another video, because I thought I remember someone saying that he goes in depth into Y-DNA testing, but maybe I misunderstood. I think the best part of this video is exactly what he's saying in terms of the admixture versus the family tree. And I say this all the time, the admixture just gives you this vague idea. I always like to say it's almost like a pixelated view of your family ancestry. And yeah, it's going to give you ideas where your family came from, about your percentage of where everything came from. But when you look in your family tree, that's when you get the actual story. That's when you find out where people were born, what their lives were like, what they went through. With what he's found, he's been able to get beyond the slavery brick wall that many people can't get beyond. It's doubtful for most people with African American ancestry that they will be able to find a record of their African ancestors before slavery. So the fact that he found a bill of sale on one of his ancestors, while extremely traumatic for him, he is in a sense lucky that he is even able to have a document of one of his ancestors from back then, which is kind of a really weird thing to say. And, I think it's one of those things that's often discussed in Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr., a program I mention often because it was honestly one of the biggest inspirations for me getting into genealogy and making this a career and, just being interested in this type of stuff anyway. But I do want to reiterate, for anyone who is trying to build out your trees and going through Ancestry and doing those hints, you do want to be careful about adding stuff. Just because a hint pops up doesn't mean that it is reliable. And especially when you're looking at other people's family trees, there's some people that will make hypothesized connections where, there's no proof that there's a connection. They're just maybe hypothesizing it based on surnames and areas and dates. And maybe that connection's wrong, but then it gets copied by other people and, goes on. You do want to be careful with that. But on top of that, when you're going and doing this research, you don't want to limit yourself just to Ancestry. There is a lot of stuff out there. And for one, going to Family Search, which is a free website that hosts a lot of records that you will find on Ancestry. They do also host a software to build a family tree as well. They have tons of records and it's all accessible for free. Some of it you do have to go to the Family Search library to be able to access it. But once you hit these brick walls on Ancestry, there are a lot of other options that you can take, especially if you know exactly where your family came from. You can look and see what record collections are in local archives. Maybe he lives in an area near where one of his ancestral lines is from, and he can go to local archives and look at things that aren't digitized and available online, because there is a lot. So, depending how far down the rabbit hole he wants to go, and for anyone who really wants to dive down the rabbit hole and especially learn more about how to deal with African American genealogy and genetic genealogy, I highly recommend checking out the YouTube channel Who is Nika Smith, which is run by Nika Sewell Smith, who has done a lot of genealogical work and has a lot of great content about how to research African ancestry. One thing I would suggest he look into is Y chromosome testing or mitochondrial DNA testing. And basically, you know, Y chromosome, that's the paternal line. So that would, if it is correct that it traces to, I forgot what the name of that family was, but that French family, then he probably would expect European haplogroup. But for the mitochondrial line, if that is coming from one of his African lines, that may actually be able to help him in pinpointing a more specific area for his specifically maternal line. So his mother's 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 mother, and so on. And of course, if he also does Y-DNA testing and mitochondrial DNA testing through family tree, he would be able to look at Y chromosome matches. So matches where he's matching them specific through his paternal line and they're matching him through the paternal line. So you trace up each father's father and eventually you find the same man that they share as an ancestor. Same through the maternal. So for mitochondrial, it's his mother's mother's mother. I was actually able to use Y-DNA to prove a connection between my mom's Nunes Vaz line, which traces through Amsterdam back to 17th century Livorno, Italy. And I was able to confirm that it's the same family as our Nunes Vaz family, which was in Jamaica. So we actually had multiple cousins from the Jamaican Nunes Vaz side and the Dutch Nunes Vaz side take Y-DNA tests, and they matched at exactly what we would expect, proving that somewhere in the past, maybe not too far from where our brick walls are, the Nunes Vaz line of my mom's side and the Nunes Vaz line of the Jamaican side connects. So literally solving mysteries hundreds of years old. So if you'd like to learn more about that, be sure to check out that video where I talk about this research right here. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. That really does help me out. You can also click right about here if you'd like to subscribe. It is completely free to do so. And you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at GenieVlogger. I'm the Genie Vlogger. See you in my next video.